Early on, we mentioned the whole theme of collaboration. When we think about smart grid, it's not like a technology like a new web application that suddenly goes viral and everybody's using it. This one is quite different because you're actually touching the physical infrastructure of the power system. So you have to be very careful about that part. You have consumers on the other side of that line. You have a lot of technology partners. You have regulatory and policy issues. And unless all of these pieces come together, you really cannot make the progress that one would like to make. This RDSI project, I think, is a testament to that particular collaboration. And we're looking forward to thinking of this as sort of the first step. We've taken a baby step in this direction, and the rest of it is really expanding it and growing this, and of course, replicating it in other parts of the world, wherever possible. And I think we are at that cusp where we're going to see this expansion happen. So with that, I would like to get the next session going and invite Don Morostica up here, who will be moderating the next panel. And if you'd come up, Don. Don has been the director of the Office of OETID. I have a hard time pronouncing the full thing there, Office of Economic Development and International Trade, right? So he's been very supportive of the things that we've been doing, and I'll let you give a brief introduction and invite the rest of the speakers up here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And why don't we have the speakers come on up, and we'll get started that way. Before we begin, I'd like to talk about a couple things that the state of Colorado has been able to do, and the Governor's Energy Office has been able to do. We've been able to do two different grants, a $150,000 grant to Spirae and for increased employment. And recently, we've been able to do a $100,000 grant, a matching grant, for a supply chain initiative. And when we get to Judy, I think I'll have her just talk about that for a second. But both of those are ways that the state of Colorado has been able to help in moving this whole clean energy and smart energy along. The governor, you heard his great speech, and the longer he's been governor, the better he gets. And some of you know that he's really serious about this clean energy technology, and I'm so happy that CSU has decided to make him a director. Because the contacts that he's made, the trips that I've made with him, especially the trip to Israel, we found out that people all over the world really know where Colorado is, and it's because of this whole new energy economy. And we're very proud of that, because whenever we would go to speak to somewhere, in Israel, they have to form their own energy. Recently, they've discovered some natural gas, but before that, they were always worried about what they were going to do for their own energy. And they knew that the state of Colorado was there to help them along and to be partners. And so the governor was able to bring that along. The United States in Colorado really stands at a crossroads. The crossroads that we have, and you heard a little bit of it over the last hour, is that we are the center of the universe for this new energy economy. And I know that sounds pretty bold, okay? But we are the center. And what's going on here in Fort Collins, and what's going on at Colorado State University and at NREL, at Colorado University, at Colorado School of Mines, is really an important factor. What the governor didn't mention, almost 17,000 new jobs have been created in Colorado because of this whole new energy economy. When he talked about Vestas and the 2,600 jobs and the number of companies that have surrounded them, that's just a small part of what's going on in the state of Colorado. Right now, we have on the books about 5,000 new jobs between now and the end of 2011 just for the new energy economy, not including everything else in the expansion of many, many other companies, but because of this whole new energy economy. So we stand at this crossroads, and part of that crossroads is the smart grid. And Colorado is going to be at a point in time in history when this smart grid, people are going to be looking at us, and it's not going to be an easy feat. Right now, we can't determine, and as we get into the panel, into the questions, where does it all begin? Does it begin at the consumer level, or does it begin at the utility level? because that's going to make a big difference on how this thing is able to move forward in the future. And from a job and workforce standpoint, we know because our universities and our community colleges are getting ready for what's going to happen with the workforce that we're going to need, the kind of technologies that we're going to need in the state. It's not going to be all 4-year degrees. A lot of it's going to be technical degrees. It's going to be 2 years degrees. It's going to be high school degrees that have certain mathematical and scientific knowledge. And all our school system in the state of Colorado is going to benefit from this. So what I'd like to do is start out with our distinguished panel, and each one of them is going to take about 5 minutes and talk about what they're doing in this whole new energy grid. And I've got a little bio on each one of them. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because if they weren't smart and good, they wouldn't be up here. But as the moderator, we'll go through each one of them, and I'd like to be able to begin by saying that each one of them has a very special tribute to what they do. And I'm trying to find my bio here, so that's what I'm looking at. I could probably do it off the cuff, but let me see if I can make sure I get it in front of me. Here it is. Let's start with you, Patty. Patty, of course, from Spirae, and Patty is really runs it here. I know that Sunil thinks he does, but she's really the backbone, like every company has, is that individual that is able to, on a daily basis, carry forward. And why don't you go ahead and spend 5 minutes and talk a little bit about what you do, Patty? You want to get up here?
So my role here today is to announce the Center for Smart Grid Advancement. We are delighted to be able to announce this today. Obviously, this is a big day for us, and we've been working for some time toward this day. For several years, Spirae has been involved in leading efforts to educate and inform stakeholders around the opportunities and challenges with the current electric system. You've heard a little bit about that today. And what's so exciting about the center is it concentrates those efforts and gives us a tangible mechanism in order to really train all of the stakeholders regarding the economic, the technology, the policy, operational issues associated with really transforming our grid. Not an easy task, and one that will take several years. But we're really excited to, as I said, kind of concentrate those efforts and move the ball forward, if you will. So how does Spirae fit into this? We're a technology and engineering consulting company, and we've been trying to solve our own workforce development issue for some time, which is why this has been important to us. But our core competencies, as you see at the bottom of this slide here, are around renewable and distributed energy integration, controls technologies, which you'll have the opportunity to see today, and then also modeling and simulation. And we're taking those core competencies and we're really leveraging them with the Center for Smart Grid Advancement. So let me quickly just describe what the center is. It's if you kind of think of a three-legged stool, and I'll walk through what the three legs are. So you have the Integrid Lab, which we co-own with Colorado State University. Many of you toured that facility today, and hopefully that was beneficial and helps you get an understanding of what it's all about. That's one leg of the stool. The next is Spirae's Smart Grid Network Operations Center, which will be housed here at Innosphere on the 3rd floor. So we're excited about that. That's a big move for us. The third component is the educational component, which it's really comprised of short-length professional training courses. And that's what brings it all together, if you will. What's unique about this center, and what we're especially excited about, is what we're doing with the Integrid is we're taking and leveraging that real live power system that's housed at Integrid. We're taking the command central environment, if you will, at the operations center, and turning that or leveraging those assets into a way to train and educate stakeholders. The courses that we'll be developing, and this is kind of the unique part that we're especially excited about, is because we're leveraging these assets, we're going to be able to not only provide an understanding and a knowledge base around smart grid technologies and the variables, but really a hands-on environment so that all participants can come away with a real experiential, how do you say, experiential experience? That would be redundant, but you know what I mean. Hands-on opportunity to see how the technologies work, how they interoperate, how they communicate, how it all comes together at that systems level. The courses that we'll be developing, for instance, you'll take a simulated power system and run different scenarios. So you may run a scenario without smart grid controls, then you run the same thing with smart grid controls. Another example might be running a scenario with low penetration of distributed generation, another one with high penetration of distributed generation. What'll be so cool about this is that participants can actually observe the results of those different scenarios. They can discuss with other participants coming from different perspectives the impact of those results. And then they can take that back to their environment and apply it to whatever perspective or whatever their role is in this smart grid transformation. Whether that's a policy perspective, whether it's a utility operation perspective, whether it's a technical provider perspective, et cetera, because all of those groups need to be talking and working together and understanding the same stuff in order for them to successfully play their role in this transformation of the smart grid. As CSU has played a large role, as you saw on the last panel here, we will be collaborating with them in this training program and offering a smart grid certificate through Colorado State University. And we're looking to offer our first course this summer. So we're really excited about that. So stay tuned. And if any of you want to give me your card to get on that list, please do. Today is a special day because we're launching the center. We wouldn't be able to take this important step without a number of funders that I'd like to just take a quick second to recognize, many of whom are sharing the stage with me today, or representatives from the, yeah. So the governor left. We have Tom Plant from Governor's Energy Office, so thank you. Colorado State University, Office of Economic Development and International Trade, and Fort Collins Utilities. So you've kind of been hearing an underlying theme that's maybe not explicit, but that it takes a village to do smart grid, and I think it's taking a village to do this education piece as well. So we're looking forward to focus on workforce development being a priority in the next governor's administration, we hope, because we think that's the linchpin of Colorado's transformation to the new smart grid. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. You went over a minute and 19 seconds. So Tom Plant, who is our next panel member, is going to have a minute. No. Let me tell you a little bit about Tom. Tom and I have worked very closely together at the Capitol, and I've really enjoyed to get to know Tom. I knew him a little bit. He was on the Joint Budget Committee before I was there, and so I was able to see how he performed in that way. But he's really an Energizer bunny. He rides his bicycle everywhere around the Capitol. Rain, snow, shine, it doesn't make any difference. And he's really, between our two offices, we've been able to work on thousands of new jobs for the state of Colorado. So Tom, I'd like to have you come up and say a couple things about what you do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the governor said that everybody in the cabinet isn't from CSU, but I have yet to meet anybody in the cabinet who's not from CSU. So I don't know that that's necessarily. I think even the lieutenant governor is from CSU, right? Yeah. And it was also interesting to say the governor said he got his 4-year degree here, and I got my 5-year degree here, and I think that's better, right? And so it's one more. But you know, Fort Collins is really, it really is. I mean, it's been talked about as the center of this kind of thought and this kind of advancement, and it really is true, and it really hit home for me when we were in Copenhagen, and we were meeting with the first international collaborative of smart grid groups, and it was Fort Collins and it was Copenhagen, and that was the beginning. That was the kernel of the whole thing, and it really got started here. Wade, I know, was very involved, as well as many others, and so it really is growing straight out of Fort Collins. A lot of this this activity, the thought that's going on, obviously the advancements of Spirae and Sunil, now controls Denmark's utility grid from this building, and I'm sure you'll be getting a call from Secretary Clinton about that very soon. But so truly, world domination isn't too far away, but. It really is a fantastic thing for Colorado to have this right here in Fort Collins, and it's something that we're tremendously proud of. I was just thinking, it actually just occurred to me today that the very first grant that I wrote when I came into this office in January of 2007, the very first grant I wrote was for Fort Zed, and yes. And then as I walked in here, my staff handed me the contract that I was to sign for the Smart Grid Advancement Center, which is the very last grant that I will sign in my position here. So really, right here in Fort Collins has been the bookends, and it's been a wonderful experience. I was asked to talk a little bit about smart grid policy in Colorado, and so it's just beginning here in Colorado, as it is in many places, but it is absolutely essential. When you think about the way that the grid is changing, but the way that our needs are changing. So we're trying to integrate demand response. We're trying to integrate distributed resources. We're trying to maximize energy efficiency. We're trying to use centralized utility resources in the most effective way possible. We're having to really integrate all of these varying resources in different ways, and it requires a much smarter approach than we have been taking. You saw when they launched the product here, where they're able to start to bring down that peak demand by using these distributed generation resources. That is so key, because we build in the state, in this country, we build to our maximum demand. And when peak demand is way up here, we have to build generation to meet that demand. So if we can bring that down, that means we don't need to build as much generation. It means we can save money for the consumer, and it means we can reduce pollution. So all of those things together are all being advanced by smart grid. As you change that system, you also need to, and you're introducing new technologies, and you're introducing new systems. So homes that, for example, so you're introducing new technologies like electric vehicles that are going to completely change that demand structure that we're looking at within the grid. Also change the ways utilities are going to be managing those new loads. One of the big concerns utilities have is everybody comes home and plugs in their car at 5:30, it's going to blow out all their transformers. So there needs to be a communication between that vehicle, between the utility, and within the home. And that communication needs to go both ways. Right now we have a one-way communication system. In the center here you see an example of an energy monitor for a homeowner so that they can start to manage their energy use more effectively, as well as the overall grid and the kinds of communications that we need on the grid. And this is the kind of system that are changing. We've got distributed generation on the roof. We've got high-speed network connections. We've got smart thermostats and smart appliances. We've got green pricing signals. We've got plug-in cars. All these systems are changing, but they can't change within the current structure. It takes a change in the structure. It takes a change in policy to enable that to come forward. And so last year, the Colorado legislature passed Senate Bill 180, which created a smart grid task force. And the central acknowledgement of that bill was that we need to start preparing ourselves. We need to start preparing a policy structure and a regulatory structure that's going to help companies like Sunil's and others to be able to thrive and succeed here in Colorado, and it's going to help our utilities and their consumers be able to benefit from the advances that smart grid has to offer. But we need to make sure that we provide that strong foundation. because otherwise it's kind of a Wild West atmosphere out there. Everybody's trying to create as we go along, and there's no real direction, no real underpinning, and no real guarantees for a lot of the people who are going to be involved in this in terms of their security. So that was the bill that was passed. The task force met this entire summer and fall. Where we had our last meeting in December. Wade was on there. There's other members of the Smart Grid Task Force, I think, here. Dan Gregory is right. So over here, he was on the task force. We've had people there from municipal utilities, rural electrics, from the investor-owned utilities, both investor-owned utilities, and then the folks that I just mentioned, as well as the Office of Consumer Counsel, to be talking about how this would impact the consumer, environmental groups, and governmental groups, others. So it was a real mix of stakeholders to talk about a variety of issues that were associated with this. We kicked off this task force with a report that we had. Does that mean I'm over? You want it blinking red like that? Nothing comes out of the ceiling. I know this place is really high tech. It worries me. So with a report that we had actually contracted with an unnamed university to the south of here to prepare for us, and really identified some of the critical areas that need to be addressed, either from a policy or a regulatory standpoint. There are remaining areas that need clarification. And so we started to tackle those areas. And there were some areas where we could not come to agreement, as you might imagine. The recommendations of the task force are all of our consensus recommendations. So it sort of sets that base bar of this is what everybody agrees on. And then there are a number of issues where obviously that's going to take some work by the policymakers to try and determine what is in the best interests of the public that they represent. And we tried to identify those issues in the report as well, and in the white paper. And both of these things, the report's going to be released on the 20th of January, and that will be available on our website, which is rechargecolorado.com. And the Smart Grid white paper is available on there right now. You can go to rechargecolorado.com, go to publications, you can find it in there, and read through it. It's actually, they did fantastic work, and we were really happy with what we had to start with there. But these are the kinds of issues that we were trying to address, and you can see that it is very broad-based, from everything from grid operations, and you get into some of the technical specifications, communications specifications, all these various things. One of the things that we all agreed on, and one of the things that is in the consensus recommendation, is that it needs to be, there's a term that I actually came up with when I was in the legislature. It's called speciflexity. And you want to be flexible in how you get there. You want to be able to, you want to allow for innovation and the kind of broad thinking that can help you get to your goals, but you want to be specific about what those goals are so that everybody knows where they're heading to. And this is something that we all agreed on: open architecture and the kind of environment that would embrace that kind of innovation. So these are the various different. I won't go through all of them because my red blinking light up here is getting bigger. But we are going to see some bills this year that are going to address this. One will be one that will come out of the Smart Grid recommendations that will be introduced in the legislature. But also energy storage systems is very likely to be addressed in this year's legislature. And this is a critical part of this because you want to add in flexibility in managing all these resources, as well as a variety of other bills that may or may not be introduced that have been thrown around by various interested legislators. So it's going to be a very interesting session. It's going to be potentially a very important session. And so I would encourage all of you here as subject matter experts, as people who are in this industry, understand how important it is that we develop a welcoming policy and regulatory structure, but one that is going to provide the kinds of protections and assurances to the public and to the utilities and to everybody involved. One example is smart homes and consumer privacy. This is going to be a very big issue. There's a lot of data. When you think about data being sent around energy use in an individual's home, being sent every 5 seconds or every 15 seconds or every minute. That's a lot of data. And that data being out there in the world can be used, it can be used for evil, it can be used for good. And so, there really does need to be protections. We don't have anything in the statutes because we haven't encountered this before. It's going to need to be addressed at some point. This is an example of the kind of data that's out there. What we're actually trying to get to is a real comprehensive approach here in Colorado that will start with energy conservation, grid efficiency, renewable integration of our incredible resources that we have here, and then ultimately transportation electrification. The governor mentioned the kinds of national energy security implications that has. All of this comes together within Smart Grid and within the kinds of things that Sunil and others here in this room are all working on every single day that are so important to the future of the state. So thank you very much.
Did I really think that I could keep a politician to 5 minutes? You know, I went over on that. And so now Dr. Troxel, I'll just point out who he is. He's not going to be able to speak because we have no time. But I'd like to introduce Wade Troxel. Of course, all of you know who he is.
Thanks, Don. It's a real pleasure for me to be a part of this panel and just tie together some of the things that we have going on at Colorado State University in the context of a lot of these smart grid activities. And so I just have this one chart just to tie together a number of these activities. And it does illustrate a lot of the themes that previous speakers have talked about, and that's the collaboration and the partnerships and the opportunities for basically moving forward not only technologically from a College of Engineering perspective, but as a society in terms of economic development and innovation that can actually lead to the integration of a lot of these clean renewable energy resources. And I believe fundamentally that the smart grid is an enabling technology to allow for a lot of these clean renewable energy resources to be realized. And so this spider diagram, as I describe it, you know, at the university, we, starting at the right-hand side, we have the educational component. We have, and again, our partners here really start with, like Woodward Governor, that provided a gift to the university for $1 million that enabled us to start a systems engineering graduate, master's PhD and master of engineering program, which is enabling us to create around an energy systems program and smart grid energy systems. So we have academic and research related degree programs related to that. But as Julie announced with the Advancement Center, we're also integrating and getting curricula that directly relate to the needs of industry. And so the more credit and non-credit related activities and certificates for job changers, as well as the utility industry as it transforms, and it's a different skill set and so forth that integrates not only the power engineering, but the communications infrastructure, as well as the ability to fundamentally manage and operate a system that is different. And with that, we have a number of programs related to this. We have a $5 million DOE project that's related to plug-in electric vehicles, where we're partnered with the community college system and Arapahoe Community College system around operation and maintenance around plug-in electric vehicles. As you think about their increase and how do people maintain them, how do first responders deal with plug-in electrics, which will become more commonplace which is a different set of health and safety issues with regards to dealing with those on a first responder basis. we've been very integral with the demonstration projects, and we feel that that's fundamental to the advancement of this area, but also the education and the research context in which it provides. And so the RDSI project with Fort Zed, and we also have some other demonstration projects that come out of our facilities through the Integrid Laboratory, our partnership with Spirae and the city on that. We have our partnerships, which this list doesn't do it justice, but really those that want to partner together, we're doing so, and a lot of that is not only private sector companies wanting to demonstrate parts of their technology, but it's also public partners and other educational institutions, the Danish Technical University, their RISU, which is their equivalent of our NREL, and so forth. One of the things we have going on at CSU as well is we have a core faculty of about 10 people that work in the smart grid area from various perspectives: controls, consumer behavior, and in engines and energy conversion. But we're also hiring a core faculty of three different faculty members. 2 were on board, and an offer is now extended to a third, bringing smart grid focus from a communications perspective, smart grid focus from a power engineering perspective, and a smart grid from a energy conversion, energy storage, and optimization from a smart grid perspective. So we're building the bench of capabilities at the institution for research and education, as well as relationships. That makes us so important. So that then drives a lot of the research we talked about, which we have a research component, and Peter Young is here and he has a research component. It's a part of Fort Zed. We have the Maxwell Ranch Wind Project, which is envisioned to be a research wind project as well as a utility scale production plant at some point. Our interaction with the collaboratory, and David Hiller is here with some of our friends from our partnering educational institutions, and that's so important, working with NREL, University of Colorado at Boulder, and Colorado School at Mines, in bringing together resources that are truly world-class when you tie it all together. And that finally brings it around to facilities, and this facility clearly is an important component of that, with the Integrid Laboratory and some of the other things that we have going on. So there's a lot of things going on at CSU, but it really is in partnership and collaboration with the state, with a lot of our private sector partners, and so forth. So really think this is a great day and appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Wade. Appreciate that. Boy, it's a lot of great things going on at Colorado State University, and as well as all over the state. Our next panel member is Chris Shepard, who's the founding executive director of the Colorado Clean Tech Industry Association. And Chris also is leading as the chair for the new venture capital commission that the governor has recently put together. So, Chris, come on up and say a few words.
Well, I'm not chairing that Venture Capital Advisory Board. I am on it, though. And before I start, I'll just apologize. I am not a CSU grad. I really, I'm sad to tell you.
That's why she's not chairing the board.
The CCIA is a statewide clean tech organization. We're industry organization with almost 200 clean tech companies from around the state. Dedicated to bringing investment capital into the state, expanding the workforce for clean tech, delivering political leadership through an industry voice, establishing ties with other industries within the state to grow clean tech companies, and then, of course, extending leadership for the state of Colorado in clean tech. When we started about 2 years ago, one of the main things that our industry members as well as state asked us to do was to put together a roadmap, an analysis of where Colorado is right now, where we want to be, and a roadmap to get there. So this past year, that is what we did. We went out and raised a whole lot of money with the help from the Governor's Economic Development Office, Governor's Energy Office, CSU, the other universities in the state, and some other organizations. And so what we did is we went ahead and we pulled together a large group of stakeholders with interviews and everything else that we did around the state. It was over 120 stakeholder interviews, but we had people from every clean tech sector as part of this process, as well as folks from labor, from the rural areas, from workforce, from, you name it, we had it. It was quite a lot of herding cats, let me tell you. So we brought these stakeholders together, and what Navigant Consulting did for us is they looked at what Colorado had, our core competencies within our research institutions, within the industry, and then looked at what the competition looked like, as well as some metrics around what the potential for job growth was, what the type of jobs that would be created from these different industries. And you won't be surprised to see that smart grid is one of the top priority sectors for Colorado, according to this outside analysis by Navigant Consulting. And the other ones are wind power, solar power, and bio-derived products. Now, I think across the board, Navigant also identified research as Colorado's driving competitive advantage. And I think with CSU's leadership, CU, NREL, mines, you will see that across the board. But then they also recognized that because of our access to the markets, especially the wind and solar markets around, and our progressive policies, that those things also are a virtuous cycle, is how they put it. And I really had hoped the governor would still be here, because it's those policies as well as access to the markets that are really will be a factor in driving development of the industries. But then I wanted to pull out a couple of the points from the smart grid analysis. And, research across the board is where we're strong, but within smart grid specifically, it's the pilot and demonstration projects that communities like Fort Collins has done with Fort Zed, and what Boulder has done with Smart Grid City. And, in looking across the competitive landscape, Navigant said that there's only one other project that is as ambitious as these two projects, and that's the Buchanan Street project in Austin. So that really sets Colorado apart in smart grid. Secondly, the workforce that we have in telecom and IT are very transferable into the smart grid sector, and we're very strong. We're in one of the top 5 or top 10 front range, the region for that type of workforce. And then the collaboration with the utilities. We've seen it today with Fort Collins utilities. We've seen it in some of the other areas as well. That has helped set Colorado apart. And then this brand equity. I think Tom mentioned it, and Don mentioned it, and the governor mentioned it, when they went to Denmark, when they went to Finland, people recognize Colorado for that brand equity. But then, of course, there's always barriers, but it gives us opportunities, right? So the smart grid functionality and benefits aren't fully realized, and that's because of regulation and policy. So that is something that we all need to work together on. And then communication between the utilities and smart grid product developers needs to be strengthened. And when you're representing the companies with the technologies and the services for being put into the grid, that's very important to have that relationship. So we did come up with an action plan after looking at our core competencies, what the competition looked like, what the barriers were. Then we came up with some action plans. And this isn't just a CCIA action plan, this is a state action plan. This is all of the stakeholders in this room as well as around the state. So every sector has these foundational needs, and they are around money, basically. These companies need financing to grow. So that's one of the main things that we'll be working on as the CCIA, and hopefully with you all as well. The workforce is another action that all of us need to take together, and I think what you guys announced today really fits into that very well. And we have some other plans to increase the executive talent in the state for clean tech too. So now, specific to smart grid, there are a few that you guys are already doing. As packaging and promoting Colorado's benefits to attract smart grid companies. That was, out of all the sectors, that kind of packaging and branding is very unique to smart grid for Colorado. So that was not called out for any of the other sectors. But we can brand ourselves, and have started branding ourselves as a smart grid center of the world, basically. Sunil, I think you've helped lead that very ably. And strengthening the incentives for utilities to invest in new technologies is another thing we'll be working on, and that will be legislative and policy and regulatory too. So I think you'll see us all working together on those, and then connecting the companies to the utilities. Then there were some supporting actions that came out of the report. The report's on our website, so please go take a look at it. I won't spend too much time because I am over time too. So this is a 3 to 5 year plan. I look forward to working with everyone on it to make sure we get it implemented in a timely fashion. Thank you.
Chris and I are on too many committee and council. She's actually the chair of the Department of Labor's Green Jobs Council. Very good. Yeah, has done a great job with that. That's we're seeing a lot of great process coming out of that committee. And finally, our last panel member, Judy Dorsey, is the executive director of the Colorado Clean Energy Cluster and was the founding president of Brindle Group, which is a Colorado-based engineering firm. So, Judy, come on up. And
thank you, Don. Time remaining. Are we started? I feel like I'm off to the races here. I was asked today to speak about the very particular topic of Colorado as a smart grid hub internationally. So while I am also a proud alumnus of Colorado State University, I'd like to try and shift our thinking a little more globally for my remaining 4 minutes and 43 seconds. And in particular, there's no way I could share all of the evidence that we have for Colorado being an international hub in smart grid in this short amount of time. So I'd like to share some of that evidence with you. But more importantly, I'd like to share with you the framework that the Colorado Clean Energy Cluster has been working on in order to have that impact grow faster and in a more sustained way through our initiatives-based approach. And then finally, most importantly, I'd like to not just invite you to learn more about the Colorado Clean Energy Cluster, but inspire and hopefully challenge you to find a way to get involved in one of our initiatives or as a member. And the reason is because when I look at what's happened in the last 5 years in smart grid, and I was also able to go with Sunil and have that beer with Governor Ritter in Copenhagen, everything that everybody has said is true in terms of putting Colorado on the map in this space. But what we haven't said is the flip side of that coin. Because of all the opportunity, it's incredibly dynamic and it's incredibly competitive. So we have to bond together as a cohesive state in order for us to remain competitive in this way. So with no further ado, let me quickly introduce the Colorado Clean Energy Cluster. We're a nonprofit. We are a enterprise for growing, incubating, and expanding clean energy companies in Colorado. We were formerly the Northern Colorado Clean Energy Cluster, so we like to say we are incubated in Northern Colorado. We're regionally agnostic for all the reasons I just said about our competitiveness as we've traveled globally to look at this issue. The idea is not to be all things to all people in clean energy through this nonprofit. The idea is to partner with all the strengths that we see on the stage with our Governor's Energy Office, Economic Development, CCIA, our other partners in economic development and clean energy, and have this nonprofit provide high impact, big visibility efforts that can help continue differentiating us so that we can remain competitive. So we have 3 so far. I wanted to also acknowledge that many of our board of directors are here. I don't have time to name them by name, but this is the vision and leadership from our board of directors that has created this initiatives-based approach. Fort Zed, you've heard a lot about. That's our high-profile demonstration in smart grid. The International Clean Tech Network, I'm going to spend some time with explaining what that is about with respect to global access. And then finally, as Don mentioned, just last month, the OEDIT Commission voted and approved a grant for the Colorado Clean Energy Cluster with our partner, the Colorado Association of Manufacturing Technology, to lead the statewide supply chain initiative in this area. So we're quite excited to be adding that 3rd major initiative in 2011. So a lot of great announcements today. But I would like to focus specifically on the international issues. International Clean Tech Network, when you hear all of the evidence that people have provided about how we're known around the world, I like to think of it that we are punching above our class weight. If you look at a population of 5.5 million people compared to our competitors, and we talk about Texas, California, New England, and the rest of the world, we are punching above our class weight. So our idea was to go find those other high-performing clusters globally, since our businesses are operating globally, and to partner up and find those that were also into this initiatives-based approach and work together on direct value to the members of our respective clusters. In 2009, we co-founded with Copenhagen Clean Tech Cluster, the International Clean Tech Network. In 2010, we added Norway, Research Triangle Park, North Carolina, Austria. In 2011, which we'll be hosting next month here in Fort Collins in this building, and throughout Colorado, we will be adding other clusters from France, Northern Italy, Spain, Singapore. So you get the idea. The kicker is, because it's about direct value, most of these clusters, as we've profiled and selected them very carefully, have an emphasis in smart grid. So there's an incredible amount of assets that we can now leverage globally to continue to advance our strategic position in this around the world. Are we having any impact globally? I thought I'd end with a picture. This is a map of, obviously, the world. And with the red dots are the members of the International Clean Tech Network, where we now have direct access, direct work in international smart grid efforts. And then the green countries are highlighting the hits of countries that have visited fortzed.com. 68 countries, every continent. And you might say, well, it's one thing to do a web click-through. We've had numerous calls and inquiries. And then in 2010 alone, 4 international delegations, 3 that were able to make it. India is still rescheduling for 2011, along with, we had Korea, France, and Japan, Osaka Z. I have 20 seconds left, but I'm going to end early and just, again, really encourage all of you to please check out coloradocleanenergy.com. We have our board members here today during the social hour to learn more. I highly encourage all of us together as a state to continue on our cohesive joint forces around international competitiveness in this space. We have a lot to be proud of, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy. So what we're going to do now is I've got a couple of questions for the panel, and then I'd like to have the audience ask a couple of questions after we get through those two, and then we'll end on time. That's great. So my first question to the panel is, what advice do you offer Governor-elect Hickenlooper about smart grid development in Colorado? And Tom, why don't I start with you?
So I think that the first thing I would say is that Governor-elect Hickenlooper has named T.J. Diora to be the director of the Governor's Energy Office, and I think it was an excellent pick. T.J.'s a brilliant guy, and he's been very engaged, particularly in the wind industry, but in business and in renewable energy industry around the country and around the world. So I think he's a fantastic pick, and I know that TJ understands the critical nature of the kinds of developments that we see within smart grid. So I think he'll be getting some good advice from his cabinet member in the Governor's Energy Office. But I also think that the fundamental thing is to create, as I said, that good, strong policy structure underneath. Set some very good targets on where you want to get to. Don't be too prescriptive about the way that you get there, and allow the tremendous innovative capabilities that we have in this state and the intellectual capital that we have in this state to really take it forward. Because Colorado is, as Judy said, Colorado is as well poised or better poised than any other place in the world to really be a leader in this field.
Thanks, Tom. Chris, do you want to add anything to that?
I was going to say he should keep his energy office staff. I know that your staff has done a lot of good work and is putting together legislation for next year, and I really hope that he keeps the course.
Anybody, Wade, do you want to add anything?
I'll just add, putting in a plug for the leadership that Tom showed with Senate Bill 180 and the Smart Grid Task Force and the report coming out of that. I think there's a lot of things, in addition to the CCIEA report, I think there's a lot of groundwork that's been put in place, and I think it's really beginning to execute on some of those things. Another aspect, we're doing a lot of demonstrations, but I think we have a lot of backfilling to do in terms of the education, research, and that sort of aspects that will underpin the broader application and the broader impact of this innovation that will really come out of this particular sector.
Judy or Julie, either one of you want to add anything?
I want to just take. Yeah, I do. I get double. I just want. You can't ask Don. You can't pass a legislator.
Not with a politician. I'm
Talking.
telling you, they're going to talk.
I do want to acknowledge a couple of my staff members that are here. Matt Futch, who's over here, is our utilities lead, and Carly Gilbert over here is a utilities associate. And they've both been very involved in the Smart Grid Task Force, leading us forward, contracting that Smart Grid report, and they've done an excellent job. So appreciate all the great work that they've done, and they're staying. And so they'll continue on that good work from the Energy Office.
I'll just kind of restate something at the risk of being repetitive, but I'm hoping that Governor Hickenlooper will continue with the Governor's Energy Office support and investment in workforce development around Smart Grid. I really think it's the crux of what Colorado needs to do to stay leading edge in Smart Grid.
Okay. All right.
I don't want to pass it back.
Next, I'll go to the next question here. Okay, just hold it on right there. Don't give it to Tom next. My next question is, where should the smart grid be developed first, at the customer level or at the systems level? Any thoughts on that, Judy?
Systems?
Yeah.
I'd say yes, both. Yeah.
From my perspective, I think that Fort Zed is a good demonstration for relatively focused investment in a few amount of resources, integrating those. You get a disproportionate benefit, the 20 to 30% peak load reduction on these feeder peaks on an ongoing basis. And so, that's taking a systems perspective and looking at particular value propositions where you can extract out the value. And that's in contrast to the thing that it's all things to all people, and it lacks focus, and it takes a huge investment that doesn't get you anywhere. So I would say it's really a systems perspective with value that's pinpointed and extracted, because there's value all over the place and innovation that can occur in this area.
I guess I'd say, excuse me, that I don't know if the public's ready for it to be implemented at that customer level yet. I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done first.
Okay.
I'm going to take my cue from Mr. Smart Grid, who I heard say yes, same as Tom. Should it be? I love that genius of the and. There is no or, systems level or customer level. So yes, both. I think that this RDSI project, when we competed for this project, 9 were awarded throughout the country, and as we've benchmarked and had the peer reviews with the other 8, one thing that does differentiate the RDSI project is the degree of customer involvement. And so I'm seeing Kim Jordan here and the city, both not just from the electric utility standpoint, but from the end user standpoint, as well as CSU's facilities in Larimer County. So there has been a wealth of knowledge with regard to drilling through some of those tough challenges, to your point of, is the consumer ready, as we have some of these leading edge companies willing to develop and explore that together with the systems level utilities.
Julie, do you have anything? No? Let's do one more here for the panel. How ready are utilities to deal with the opportunities and the challenges of the smart grid?
I wish I didn't have this in my hand right now.
You're afraid of the utilities?
I don't think that the utilities have an incentive to do any of it right now. I think that's where policy comes in. There's right now the incentive is to sell as much electricity as they can, and so it kind of is a schism between what we're talking about and the current way things are done.
Wait,
And I would just give a little different perspective. Since we live in northern Colorado and served by Platte River Power Authority, and Brian Moak's here, and serving 4 municipal utilities, and that's Fort Collins, Loveland, Longmont, and Estes Park. And being a muni, I think we have some particular advantages with the local decisions with regards to that. And I think we have a good relationship with Platte River Power Authority, and I think a lot of the local decisions as it relates to the smart grid relates to the distribution utility. And here in Fort Collins with our Fort Collins utilities, we have incredible opportunities, but it's not just the opportunities, but I think enlightened leadership, both from the city manager and the utility staff, that basically, as was pointed out earlier, is walking really a fine line, because you really can't compromise keeping the lights on, but there's opportunities to actually create a lot more efficiencies and benefits to the overall systems element, and that's where it's walking that fine line, and that's where there is risk, but really approaching it and managing that risk appropriately. It's not really a risk at all. In fact, it's a risk not to pursue this in a well-informed, knowledgeable way, and that's, I think, the approach that that's being taken here, in a way that at the end of the day, it's a benefit to the citizens that are served.
Yeah, I would add to that. I agree with what Wade said, but I'd add that utilities. I think utilities are very aware of the benefits of smart grid on their system. Utilities know their systems very well. They understand how they can benefit from information management at the substation level, at the distribution level, at the transmission level, and throughout their existing system. They're very good right up to the meter, and it's the other side of the meter that's not where their expertise is, and that's where the utilities really need help. And that's where, as Chris mentioned, that's where policy and regulation and these kinds of things can come into play, because their expertise stops at that meter. But the sort of exponential benefit of smart grid is when you take all of the benefits within the home or within the business on the customer side of the meter, and you combine it with all of the efficiencies and the benefits on the utility side of meter, and you start that two-way communication going between them. That's when you start to really maximize the benefits.
Julie? Or Judy? Yeah. Go down the other end there, yeah.
I think Sunil characterized it well, in sort of that creative tension that utilities have between managing an existing operating system and pushing innovation. And I would and sometimes I feel that utilities get a bum rap on managing that tension in our country. And that's one of the interesting things about when you do go globally and you look at that map on who's hitting on Fort Z, the leadership is coming out of utilities in other parts of the world, and some of these countries, they're not transforming a 100-year-old grid, they're creating their first grid. So I just think when we talk about utilities, we should have a broad perspective and an open mind towards striking that balance that Sunil discussed earlier.
Could I have a question from the audience? Anybody have something they'd like to ask the panel?
Brian Moak, Platte River Power Authority, and I'm just curious if anyone can comment. There was a couple of remarks made about legislation on smart grid next year, but not any specifics. Any more details on that?
Well, I can say that the legislation, the session hasn't started yet, so everything is all the legislation is confidential until the session starts and the bills are introduced, and so up until that point, it's up to the individual sponsor to make that information public. I can say that Senate Bill 180 last year was introduced with the intention of having follow-up legislation this year to try and address the key recommendations of the task force, and so that will be and that report comes out on January 20th, and so basically the concepts that are within that report will be very likely the subjects that are being addressed in that legislation.
As of yesterday, there were 500 bill titles pulled. 499 were energy, so Brian, get ready.
New energy economy is alive and well.
Yeah, it's coming. Just kidding. Any other? Yes, great. Need a microphone?
Thank you. I'll just make a quick comment and then ask you to comment back on my comment, which is one of the things that the dangers that I've seen with smart grid is that we focus on the technologies. I think the real power is in paradigm shifts that are beginning to happen across the industry. And an example is we talk a lot, we and present company accepted, but we in the industry talk a lot about a consumer or a utility as if they're all one size fits all. One of the things the smart grid allows us to do, and this is one of the paradigm shifts, is to really understand the diversity both in consumers and the diversity in the utilities that provide services to the consumers. And so I think when we ask questions about what are consumers interested in, what are consumers doing, what are consumers willing to pay for, what are utilities doing, what are utilities willing to pay for, the answer is there's no answer. They're all different, right? So there's some utilities that are just way out front. There's some that are way in the back, and a lot kind of bunched around the middle, I suspect. And likewise with consumers. I think there's consumers now that are past ready. The experiments that were done even 5 years ago up in the Olympic Peninsula project showed that the consumers were more than ready to buy into this. But that doesn't mean all consumers are going to buy in immediately, right? So I just want to emphasize this issue of the paradigm shift being a diversity in how we deliver power, the utilities, the consumers, and so on. And I just wondered if anybody had a comment.
Any comments in the panel on that?
Well, I'll just, from an organization development perspective, if you think about change management and the cycle that people go through when something changes, whether it's a death in the family or whether you're moving your home or whatever, there's that, there's different ones. But anger, denial, acceptance, it's a process. And I think what you're speaking to is that you have to acknowledge and recognize the fact that everybody's in a different place on that spectrum. And so how do you reach them at the appropriate time and educate and inform and give them what they need in order to progress through that? And some of that will be policy driven. Some of it will be simply others paving the road first and allowing them to see the way. But I think that's a really important point.
I think a big important part of that, and I completely agree with you, Steve, is the innovation aspect. And I think in creating an environment where a lot of the value is extracted, and really it's not a top-down and the consumers have to accept and adopt and change, but it's one where they actually see the value through the innovations, through the new products, and through the delivery of services and delivery of energy that they haven't realized already. And one of the things, I see Pat Eloise Young here, she's in psychology here at CSU, and that is an important component is the consumer acceptance, but it's not just trying to do it in the way that it's always been done, but perhaps with a different color. It's really extracting out the value and doing things that you would have never imagined it done in that fashion previously. And I just quickly reflect upon how telecommunications have changed in my lifetime. From the black phone hanging on the wall, and to the point where today and where it's ubiquitous communications, and it's that kind of innovation and infrastructure that will change in the energy sector as well, and that will drive, I think, a total remapping of how we even think about our energy systems.
So when you mentioned paradigm shift in consumers, I was brought back to our recent trip to Denmark, and just recently we've been benchmarking the smart grid assets of the different clusters that I named that are in our partnership, and the whole effort out of Northern Europe around prosumers, not consumers, but prosumers are producing and consuming, and that is an example of a paradigm shift. And not just that there's that paradigm shift, but they're investing and studying that and what is the role of behavior change as a important integrated complement to technology. And then on that note, I also wanted to give a kind of shout out to the Fort Zed Community Energy Challenge. I don't know if Charlie was here earlier. I thought I saw him. There's Charlie. And so while we got to see sort of the higher tech jumpstart zone today with the Renewable Distributed Systems Integration Project in parallel, and also again, and thanks to some funding support from the Governor's Energy Office, our community through Charlie University Connections are leading the Community Energy Challenge. These are people out in neighborhoods working on the behavior change side of things and education around smart grid and conservation and efficiency. So,
any other comments? Let's give the panel a great hand. They did a nice job.